Hello there. This is Shelby Shadwell. I'm the faculty sponsor for Student Art League, and I teach all levels of drawing. We're broadcasting to you in the year 2050 or whenever you're listening to this. This is our Student Art League Alumni Speaker Series. So these are alumni that have graduated from the art program and gone on to do amazing things, great things. But we don't always, they always talk about, I call it the good, the bad, and the ugly. They give it to you raw and unfiltered about those experiences since they graduate. So, which is great because we do this so that students who are getting degrees now, educations now, can kind of look ahead at different possible paths, and that can sometimes bring the anxiety level down, hopefully. And it's just cool to see what alumni are doing and how they're faring. And so today we have very esteemed alumni, Robert Bryans. And I never had Robert as a student in any class, but I felt like Robert was my student the entire time he was here. I don't know how or why. He was always around. He was always in the studio. He's always working, always talking to everyone, all the faculty, all the other students. From what I know of Rob since he's graduated, he is a pillar of the art community here in Laramie. And so it's really cool to get that someone to talk and get feedback from somebody who is here in Laramie as an artist. And so without further ado, Rob, we're just going to turn it over to you, and we might ask you some questions here at the end, but I'm tired of talking. So Rob, thank you again for joining us.
Hey, you bet. Really, thanks for having me. And it's really good to meet everybody. It's really good to hear that. I think the people that are doing Student Art League right now are BFA candidates too. Like there's like some seriousness there and some willingness, I think, to experiment and see what the world has to offer you. I was the ultimate non-trad student, really. I didn't go to college originally for art. My first foray into college was at University of Northern Colorado in Greeley, and that was in 1998, like a long time ago. And when I went, I was a double major in philosophy and literature. And I was taking like massive amounts of reading classes and ethics and all these crazy, like bizarre classes that had nothing to do with art. But I had come out of a high school program in Casper at Kelly Walsh, where I was both in the visual arts and performing arts. And so I did a lot of theater with Mike Stadelli at Kelly Walsh. And then I also did a lot of technical theater too. So I liked working both sides and really having a whole understanding of what was going on there. And I think that kind of followed me like probably through life in a lot of like general aspects, and then specific areas too, like theater or like art. And so when I left Greeley, it wasn't for graduation or anything. It was just, I was unfocused. I was like in party mode and really realized it and didn't want to like waste the time and money on school. And so I went and worked for, 4 or 5 years, and then like had that like moment where it was like, okay, yeah, like I'm ready to go do some school now. And so I decided to go to Casper College, and I had some family connections in Casper, so I had a place to stay, and I think that's one thing about art school in general is that there's economics involved. I think that you have to like look at how much materials cost and what you really want to invest in yourself as far as like good quality materials, because it makes a huge difference in like how you produce and how you make and how you feel about making. And so I think being frugal in where I was going to go to school and how I was going to go about, doing my art education was important to me. And so Casper College was a really good choice. I ended up with 3 associate arts degrees from Casper, and really rounded, graphic design, illustration, and commercial art. And, a real good push into fine art. And when I decided to come down to Laramie, it was a pretty big transitional point in my life. I've not gone from one thing to another, let's say, without taking pauses in between. So that's like a really kind of unique thing. Like I would go to school, then did Casper College, and then came down to Laramie with full intentions of going to school. And then life took changes. And so I had to make some really pretty drastic decisions about what I was going to do in life again. I was a hardcore drinker. I mean, like I grew up in Wyoming. Like this is like real Wyoming stuff. And partying, became a part of life. And I lived in Fort Collins for a while. And in Fort Collins, it was like a way of life. I was a bouncer. I was a bar back. I lived in the scene, and it was a lot of fun. But in all reality, like I was lucky to survive it. And a lot of people that I know were lucky to survive it. And so when I came down here, it took me a while to get out of like that rut and realize, I think, that I had more to do. And so when I went back into school, it was a multifaceted experience. It was not only like, I want to better myself and I want to prepare myself for the future. I want to, hone my skills, but I also had some major like self-work to do. And that's tough. It's tough. I think as artists, I think you try to be very receptive to the world, and in your observations of the things around you, some of it has to do with emotions, and some of it has to do with like culture around you. But I think as artists, we try to like take off some of the armor and let some of that outside world in. And so part of going to school for me was repairing myself, and that's not easy. Like I think school's a stressful place to begin with, and doing self-work at the same time, like serious self-work, is that's like some majorly taxing stuff. And so part of artwork for me became this well of energy, this place where I could go to like find myself and relax and really find like some therapy and a new place of confidence in myself. And at the same time, I was getting to use the facilities and really get to know the people, my professors. And I think part of like being a non-trad and being a little bit of an old crusty fart is to be able to, have a little bit more of an adult relationship with, professors, or bring forth that adult relationship a little bit more in the people around you too, and ask for some more seriousness about that. And so, I came to school every day, pretty serious about critiques and making sure that I was, digging into some of this stuff, because I knew for me what skills and what, I guess, what a great toolbox all of my art classes have been giving me. And then also having some professors and classmates along the way who were willing to, I think, brush off a little bit of the friendship and dig into the technical aspects of the art making. And so in retrospect, as a student, as a former student, I would say, it's tough to be vulnerable to your professors and to students around you, but try to do it. Like try to be as vulnerable, try to be as open to like their criticism and letting them nitpick everything you do, because they're going to help you. like there's still things that, I have blind spots still after leaving school. And it's really nice to maintain the relationships with your professors down the road, I think, too, to make sure that when those blind spots come up, because I guarantee they will, nobody knows everything. Nobody has all the skills. And you're going to need help. Like it comes down to community. And so whoever it is, like whether it's an old professor from Casper College or multiple old professors from Casper College, which it really is, or it's multiple professors from my UW experience, make sure to maintain those relationships, and don't be afraid to reach out for help and stuff, advice when you guys are getting ready to take your next steps, or if you're just in a rut and you need to bounce out of it. I think that's been one of the biggest things for me is finding some routine. That's something that I think all of the classes that I took gave me, was the necessity for that routine, whether it's artwork that's presentable or it's visually stunning. That's the big gold medal on the wall. It's like getting up every day, finding one little thing to work on or plug away on that's art related in some way, and then remind yourself, that it's all holistically, like all the things that you're doing in your life are to make art possible. And one of the things that I do just on a daily basis this year right now is I'm doing like a little daily drawing. And that's like something that's anywhere from like a 50-cent piece to like a dollar, silver dollar, to like maybe 3x5 big, but just like a small drawing, whether it's ink or pencil. But that kind of routine, I think, even if it's just garbage that's coming out of your pen or your pencil, that kind of routine, there's process in it, there's practice. The repetition gives you confidence to come back to it every day and not get in a rut where you're like, oh, I'm having an art block. I can't make anything, or I can't make anything of substance. Well, you don't need to make anything of substance, is my theory, or my argument, that that's for someone else to decide. Like, just make stuff. And the judgment of substance is up to others, and kind of out of your hands. So keep on it, and keep making. One of my favorite things, like this is my home studio that we're in today. This little place is like about 4 steps away from my bed, which is just on the other side of this easel. It's really nice to get up in the morning and like slip on my slippers if I've got an idea, or maybe I had an idea last night and I just like didn't have the juice to bring it to fruition. That happens. Like, tiredness will creep into your lives. I know you're all young now, but there will come a time where like 10 o'clock rolls around and you're like, oh God, I gotta get in bed. Like, it really does happen. So sometimes those ideas have to wait till the next morning, but you want to hit it. You want to hit that iron while it's hot. When it's a good thing, like you want to just roll into it in the morning. And sometimes in the morning, like for me personally, before I'm thinking about a lot of stuff and I'm just reacting and working, that's a good time to just be in pajamas and roll in here, like just slip in here. You guys might hear my cat in the background howling too. He's a singer. So I'll just give you a quick pan of what I'm working on here in the area. Unhook here. This over my shoulder is a commission landscape piece I'm currently working on. This little bit down here started as just like a little fun piece. Sometimes it's good to just keep the paints wet, just get things out and dabble around in them. And I think, for me, if it's just silly and cute, whatever, just keep the paint flowing sometimes. Over this shoulder, I've got this piece right here that is a small painting, getting ready for a larger 3x4 commission piece. I'm really into bees. I'm really into gardening. It's kind of a family tradition. We're farmers, farm stock. And so I learned to garden from my grandparents, family, really important stuff. Another commission I'm working on right here is this big bison skull. And, funny enough, this is more along the lines maybe of icing a cake. It's kind of funny. I watch a lot of British baking show, and I'm also a cook. But here's my setup for the day, and it's more of an icing process so far than really a painting process, I guess. So I'm getting my America's Best Bakers work in too. But it's a working studio. It not everything I need all the time. It's limited some days, and so along with this, I've invested in a studio a couple blocks away at the Laramie Plains Civic Center, and that's a communal studio. We have 5 people in our immediate area, and then in the greater area, there are printmakers and other painters, carpenters, and it's a pretty busy space. There's another former UW alum. There's UW alumni working in there, UW employees working in there. But it's a really cool space, and it's nice to have, I think, too, just a change of surroundings, and just different people around. And I think that's one of the toughest things that I see, out of the classroom experience right now, is having that critique and having those people nearby, having physical, human presence in each other's lives. It's important stuff. And, having people's faces be able to be stuck right up to paintings and really look into the materials and just nerd on stuff. It's tough not to have that. But, outside the academic setting, you will find ways to make art possible for yourselves. And I think people get really wrapped up in the dreams of, or the fantasies of, fame, of some sort of pop culture icon as far as art, or, being a millionaire, or, something like that. And I don't know that that's necessarily for everyone. And it doesn't have to be. I had a moment this last year where I, wished I was in a little different position and made some different choices. But that's history, that's past. And so, taking the time to realize and take some inventory of where you are, and physically, I think write down, or, keep a list of things that around you that you're grateful for, like I'm really grateful that I can walk 2 blocks to a studio that I can get into 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and do whatever I want in there. It's a dream come true, really. When I was a little kid, I lived in Laramie, and I used to get trips to the UW art department, which was in the performing arts building at the time. And I had dreams of one day having, an apartment somewhere where I could walk to a studio 2 blocks away and do whatever I wanted any time of the day. And suddenly that's a reality, and I think it's really easy to have the things that you want and or be making the dreams that you wanted happen around you and lose track of how important those things are, like those small, seemingly maybe small things, like being able to walk to your studio. And I was going to broadcast from there today. I thought about it, but we don't have internet over there yet. That's something I'm working on. We've got a little bit of a transitional stage, but it's a really, really interesting place. I pay a really modest fee to be able to have the space. And I think that there's other UW alum that have had luck finding individual studios throughout the building too. And so I think my point is that um, things happen, things change, dreams evolve. I think I pictured myself uh, running off to get my master's immediately after school at some point, um, and maybe chasing the dream to be a professor. And I think I had to take a little break from that because I found some things here in Laramie that just really were making life really, really nice. And some part of that includes a job that I got on a organic farm. And so I'm a farmhand. I go out and I harvest, wash, and sort and bag organic vegetables in the summertime, spring, fall. Um, and that's found its way into my art too, because the gardening was already part of what I do. And so I think, part of what has kept me happy with the surroundings that I have and being a graduate that is taking things a little different path than most people, I think, that would have gone straight into a master's program or something like that. I guess I've worked harder on creating like a big, holistic, encompassing environment, job, part-time job, um, drumming up commissions, uh, cooking for myself, being really frugal about food. I don't hardly eat out. I used to be a cook, so it's just really not appetizing to me. Like, it's just when you've been there that long and done it that much, it gets a little old. But so it's those little things, like those little creative things that they're blocks. They're blocks of my time. There's painting time. There's cooking time. There's walking to over the studio. There's sketching time. Singing time, like the cat there. Um, but yeah, but it's hard. It's difficult. No, there's no one way, I think, to do it. And I think finding your confidence, like that daily confidence in your ability to create, is just like the most important thing. Like, I think that's the one thing that school and academics, the daily grind, you know, put into me, was that I I had to do it every day, work on it every day, whether it was something presentable or not, to keep it moving. I bog down. I just know myself. So you know, and that's like kind of like the small story of Rob. Um, you know, the ugliest it's gotten. I damn near died from addiction. Really, that's the ugliest it's gotten. I think that a lot of people think that uh, art in general, artists, actors, any sort of media producers, like that there's a life of like, drugs and alcohol and, sex and wildness. And it's just like full tilt all the time. And like, I think that that's a big fantasy. And I don't know that that was so much of why I was in the place I was, but I think that a lot of people in our field struggle with substances. And so I think that that's as ugly as it's gotten. And when it came down to it, um, when I was in the hospital and hooked up to tubes and wires and everything, uh, somebody said, what do you do? And I was like, I'm an artist. And they said, well, do you have any of your art? And I showed them some art, and they said, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing to yourself? You're incredible. Like, all you have to do is do this the rest of your life and you'll be fine. Trust me. Just keep doing this. Like, find good people to be around that, are truly good people, that are like quality people, kind and compassionate, communicate, and you'll make it. And I think there are pressures associated with artists, whether it's cultural pressures or our family or whatever, that say that you're never going to make anything, you're going to be a poor starving artist your whole life, la 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 la. Don't believe it. Like, if you believe wholeheartedly in what you're doing, if you give it your all, if you respect it the way that you want to be respected through it, if you respect your art the way you want to be respected through your art, it'll happen. Like, it'll happen. It'll take care of itself. And that's the singest cat in the world. So that's as ugly as it's gotten. The best that it's gotten is probably, getting paid for doing artwork that you didn't have to sell. Getting an award for art. Getting an award for art is probably one of the best things in the world. And I was lucky enough to get, the Best in Show award at the UW student art show. And so getting paid for art that you don't have to sell, that you get to keep, like, that's the ticket right there. That's the best of the best. And I'm open to questions too. Like, I want to give you guys some time to shoot at me.
Yes, Rob, thank you. That's a great overall summary of things. I think that's awesome. And by chance, just so you all know, the student juried awards are tonight at 6. If you are able, Anna, I think you might be in that show. I don't know if Bailey or Carmen is, but do check that out. We as Student Art League, we do Student Art League awards, especially for the salon, the work that doesn't get into the main show. We try to do a monetary award. So we did that. We recorded, Anna and Bailey and I recorded a little video presenting those awards.
Awesome.
So if anybody's able to see that, maybe they're streaming it on Facebook. I don't know. But thank you, Rob, again for that. I do have a couple of questions. And if anyone else does, I want to prioritize the student questions. But so I'll just ask now, does anybody else have a question before I start to dive in?
And nothing is too weird. Like, you can even ask about how often my cat sings. It's totally cool.
I've got one.
Lou, yeah.
How do you deal with family just telling you, like, oh, you're gonna starve, you're gonna move back home, you're gonna die, like, this is not a career? How do you deal with that?
I had a tough sell. I really did. My dad was a banker. He was like, numbers. None of this made sense to him at all. My mom is a teacher, and so she's like, you have to be a teacher or something. You can't just be an artist. And my anxiety goes off the roof, like, just thinking about running a classroom full of kids. It scares the bejesus out of me. But I could do it, like, but it just scares the crap out of me. My whole thing was like, listen, like, I'm capable. I am not doing this because it's the only thing I have to fall back on. I'm doing this because I'm good at all these other things, and everything else that I'm good at, it all leads back to here. Like, this is where my heart is. And I think you have to explain to people too that you've got one shot on this earth. You've got one shot. And if you're not able to be you, if you're not able to fundamentally search through and dig into the things that make you tick and the things that make you love, like, what's it for? Like, what's this life for? And I know, like, this is what it came down to my parents with. It was like, you love me. You love me unendingly. I've not been an angel of a child by any means, right? Uh, for I've been in lockup, for God's sakes, and so these people love me unendingly. And so my whole thing was like, if you love me unendingly, if you love me so much that you'll deal with me going through all of these different things, like, being an alcoholic, or, having, DUIs or whatever, it's like, why can't you accept this? This is a good thing. Like, this is a good, healthy thing. And I think you have to just plug away. And I think you have to make persistence one of, if not your best attributes, your goals in life, is just to persist and prove them wrong. Do things on a daily basis that, prove to them that, you're cooking for yourself, you're making beautiful meals. It may not cost $20 to eat a day, but you can make a beautiful meal for $5 that, feeds you maybe twice a day. It's crazy. That's tough, and it takes time too. Does that answer that?
Yeah.
And I think it's, that's a tough thing, because everybody's family is different. Everybody's got different expectations. And I think one thing you have to do, is realize now you're adults. You're adults. And so as adults, you have to deal with people's expectations. And people's expectations of you are not always going to be realistic. They don't know, they can't get inside your heart, and they can't get inside your head. And so expecting you to do something else other than what you're doing, really, really, if you've invested this amount of time and this amount of effort into it already, that's what you want to do. You've proven it. So I think that you have to identify those as unrealistic expectations, and really hone in on what matters to you, and focus on their real expectations of you, and that's love and communication.
Thank you for that, Rob. I think that's we have folks on the call here. Some are juniors, seniors, and we have freshmen too, and people that are just getting started with this. And may have
Yeah.
just been in a home situation. Now they're in this situation, and plus COVID, and so I think that's really good stuff to think about. I actually wanted to ask a couple of things on a little more of these kind of practical issues. That some people think being an artist, such as yourself, is this magical thing. And so I because you mentioned you've got a lot of commissions going. Can you talk a little bit more about those practicalities of being artists? Like, do you do more commissions? Do you show? How do you show, and how do you sell your work? And just kind of those mechanics, so that potentially, people watching this can go to their parents and say, well, I know this person that does X, Y, and Z.
Sure. So one of my big things, and I think it's an undersold opportunity in Wyoming, that I do for sales. I just go out to shows. I mean, I find big group shows and apply to them, and I will go to Casper, I'll go to Lander, I'll go anywhere I can find pretty much like a free room. Like if I have a friend living there, like I'll go there and sell art, and it seems kind of schleppy maybe a little bit, as an artist, but um I like talking to people. I like seeing people and kind of gauging their responses and sharing the art that way. One of the things that I've found with my commission work is that if you do good work, you're going to get more automatically. Like, don't take it for granted. Don't take for granted that there's no grade on it, that there's not a professor haggling over your shoulder and kicking your ass all the time to like make good work. Make good work. Like, make good work, because it will come back to you. Whether good or bad, it will come back to you. I use free platforms. I use Facebook. I use Instagram as showcases. I have for a long time. Whenever I see a local show for science and art, or anything that's like a cross, overlapping fields, I try to do that. I think that trying to get, different people working together in art is always like a really great opportunity for a show. For my, so as far as like, I think one of the simplest things that artists can do just out of like the gate to like, make money, or like start with, learning how to like commission work. There's some online sites out there, some reputable online sites out there for, people that are looking for quick drawings, for, digital illustration. And I know that that's like a pretty popular thing, nowadays. And it doesn't have to be like, really, really fancy, or really, really, in depth, but, people are looking for different things. And I think those might be, $50 jobs or $20 jobs to start with. But when people learn that you meet deadlines and that you do work well, it'll come back and the prices start building, and I think you as an artist, I as an artist, when I was fresh out of the gate, I probably undersold myself a little bit, and I'm kind of in that, like, fresh out of college, you're probably like a $10 an hour artist, so keep track of your time when you're working, keep track of your materials, log that stuff. When your parents or anybody else says, well, you're not keeping track of your finances or blah, 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 then you show them you're keeping track of your materials costs, you're keeping track of your time working on commission, all that stuff will come back to you. I'm trying to think of like, other, ways of finding those revenue streams. I had one on the tip of my tongue that I was thinking of, but it's tough. But you got to scrape for it. You got to hustle. You have to hustle. And I think starting with small jobs and building, but it's all about meeting deadlines and doing good work. And the price you can charge as you create the work, as you meet those deadlines, as the quality improves, you can charge more, and you learn through practice too how to make money stretch farther as well. I mean, that's part of it. That's a huge part of it. I think that people just don't give enough credit to. You have to be frugal. It's just part of it.
Excellent. Thank you, Rob. Does anybody else have other questions for Rob at this time? Any other questions?
Get your Instagram information.
Yeah, it's Yeti 307, no spaces.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I'll share that stuff with Shelby too.
Yeah, I mean, we can go ahead, and I was going to ask you at the beginning, and I forgot to, so I was going to ask you at the end, but I'll just ask you now. How can people get a hold of you, and is it okay if students seeing this get a hold of you?
Absolutely, absolutely. I can flash a business card up on the screen too, or they can contact you and get my information through you. But I'm always willing to critique. I'm always willing to have fresh eyes look at my stuff and give me some intuition. And I'm always willing to just like have a cup of coffee and talk about life too. Like it happens. So I've seen and done it all. Trust me. Like I really have. I've washed dishes. I've cooked. I've bounced. I've done it all. I've done it all.
Excellent. Excellent. Let me see. What else did I have here? That was a big one. Does anybody else have questions for Rob at this point?
This is weird. How do you do your taxes?
Great question.
So I am not an LLC. I'm not a business yet. I don't feel like I'm making enough money yet to really have to claim these as my artwork as my main income, because right now it's not really my main income, and a lot of it is cash too. I in my commissions, this is another really nice thing to think about. The big commissions will come. They'll get there, and when they come, it's gonna probably shock you a little bit. But I think one of the ways to make that happen too, one of the things I do is I ask my clients to pay half on signing the commission, and then I ask my clients to pay half on delivery of the commission. So that both puts some skin in the pot for them. So they have some money invested in work that already takes place, and you've got some money to live on and eat on and pay rent on. You know, it's important. And it also will motivate you to go in because you already have some money invested in that work too. You know, as far as like, you know, my income, I work on a farm, you know, seasonally, 7 to 8 months out of the year. And so like, that's my main, like, quote unquote job. And so that's what I use for my taxes. I think it's pretty important as an artist to have something else that you're doing, to have a side job. I think you should try your hardest to make it fit into your artist lifestyle. That doesn't mean you have to be creating art, but I think you have to like find a way that it's synonymous with your style or your idea, your big idea for about, you know, what you're creating art for. Because otherwise you can't go from job to job to job to job. And you can't be a bartender for life, trust me. You can't be a waitress for life. You can't be a cook for life. You probably can't be a farm worker for life. But you gotta like try to find those things that last as long as you can to fill the gaps, and they have to be there. Like if you're not gonna do art as like a full-time job, as like something that's paying for your health insurance and that kind of stuff, you have to have a job.
Thank you, Rob. Quick note, the last thing I really have, just a question is, you know, with the whole COVID circumstances, and could you talk a little bit about your experience with the COVID pandemic, and then assistance for artists? I thought that if you're interested in talking about that, just share.
Yeah,
I think
totally.
that not a lot of people hear about those kinds of things.
Totally. So the pandemic has obviously been like really intense. And I think one of the most intense things about the pandemic has been people's isolation and just trying to have to stay at home and find things to do with their time, you know, and not just like, I think, spiral down inside of your head and inside, you know, thinking, you know, keeping these hands busy with something. Like when they say idle hands are the devil's, they are. Like you got to keep these things working. You know, part of that daily routine that I talked about, that, you know, going to class, what do you do in class? There's daily drawings, there's sketchbooks, you know, all that kind of stuff. Do that in your real life. You know, whether you've got class going or not, you got to do that in your real life. It will help you stay limber and keep creating. And when the big things happen, they'll happen easier. I was lucky enough this year, like most of, you know, as far as like my art income every year, like just out of the blue, I'm going to say like for the last few years, I've been averaging like around like $6,000 to $8,000, you know, in my art income. And that's through like selling at shows. I do graphic design. I sell t-shirts, selling prints. That's traditional relief printmaking. And also like getting good quality prints of my paintings made, selling those, at festivals and whatnot. Also selling those online, making sure that people on Facebook, Instagram know that artwork is available as prints and it's much cheaper, that kind of thing. But all of that leads up to, staying limber and applying for things and applying for shows and getting into shows and doing weird things like video art, even if you're a painter or you're a draftsman or drawing. And so that goes onto a resume. You keep track of that stuff. And I'm not the best at that. I'm not. But you have to keep some tabs on it, and you have to like write down the big important stuff. And part of the thing that's kept me alive this year, that income from shows wasn't there. And so someone from the community said to me, someone who's an artist and also a curator of the arts, said to me, Rob, if there's anybody who should be applying for this CARES Act grant, for the people who have missed out on local shows and whatnot, it should be you. And I'm not the person that normally looks for charity, and I'm not the person that normally looks for economic help. I've lived in my car and made shit work. Like, I make shit work. I don't normally take people up on help. And looking at rent and studio and what I lost this year as far as shows, it was perfectly reasonable. And I had to sit down for, half hour, an hour, and really try to succinctly write out. It wasn't a submit a resume format. It was an actual, like, try to write some sentences about what you do and what you feel, this money will do for you. And I ended up getting, a $5,000 grant through the state of Wyoming, to keep me afloat. And it changed my life for this year. I was brought to tears just reading the message. I'm a big, giant, scary looking dude, and it brought me to tears. It's big stuff. It doesn't seem like much, but that brings it in, especially when someone who's an artist in the community says to you, Rob, you've worked your butt off. Like, just apply for it. Just do it. And so keep those people around. It doesn't matter how old they are or where they are in the community or what they make. Like, if you notice that people in the community that you're in are supporting artists, are trying to help other people get out there and be seen, like, get close to those people and pay your respects to those people, and create the friendships and the connections, because that's what it really comes down to is knowing people and having people who look out for you. Honestly.
Thank you very much, Rob. I think that kind of brings us here to the end. We're very mindful of your time, and we respect that. And we want to let you get back into the studio. So I just want to say thank you so much for your time. Thanks for being willing to speak with us about your experiences, which are fascinating. And thanks for being a real pillar of the arts community. Can you just tell everybody again ways to maybe get a hold of you?
So if you look me up on Facebook, I'm actually under Robert Douglas Bryans is my artist page, and Robert Bryans is my personal page. That's just a Facebook snafu that happened. My Instagram is Yeti307, no spaces. And I will, let Shelby give you my contact information if you want to get in touch with me. If you ever have, work that needs to be done in a bigger studio and you think you just need room to splash around, like, we can probably figure something out. But, it really comes down to community. And, whether it's within, this small group of people, you as students, or whether you keep relying on your professors or people that you meet through your professors, like alumni, grow those relationships. And don't think about, I guess, where you want to go so much as like who you want to be around, you know, as artists, like the types of people that you want to be later in your lives. And it's meaningful. These are the people that will support you, you know, and there's a lot of people that when you look for help, they're nowhere to be found, really. And it's important to keep those people around who really will be found. So, yeah.
Excellent, Rob. Well, thank you again. That brings us to the end of this alumni speaker series. So thanks for all.
Thank you, guys.
And thank you, Rob. I'm going to sign off here.